I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Begin the roll call with Commissioner Stephen.
Here.
Commissioner Culberson.
Here.
Here. Commissioner Smith. Here. Okay. Let's start with public comment, beginning with Mr. Herring.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Your name and
My
address?
name,
Yes.
Joe Herring, 315 North 5th Street, Leavenworth, Kansas, for Herring Surveying Company.
How do you pronounce that last name?
Herring.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Like red, exactly. They're here to talk about the subdivision plat, Gray's Corner. I know there's been a lot of emails going around, a lot of concerns with it. There is one exemption that needs to be held on this plat, and that is that the shop is too close to the road. It's 100 feet versus 105 feet. It's less than 5% of the regulation. There is a fix. To that, you can tear it down or make them cut off a corner. I've never seen the county request that, and always seen them grant the exemption on several plats, which the email that I sent all of you, had several of those plats listed within that email, and some of them were even farther out than they're actually in the county right away. The exemption that is requested by staff that I disagree with is that the lot line breaks, and that is a violation of county regulations. Yes, the county regulation states that it has to be 90 degrees perpendicular or radial to a curve, but it does not state it has to remain that way only as it leaves the right-of-way of the road. It can be inferred that it needs to stay straight, but past plats, track splits, boundary line adjustments don't follow that. And the county definition of a side lot line specifically states that it has to be 90 degrees, and any break, linear break, angle break, or curvature in that line has to be less than 45 degrees. So by definition, it is allowed. Later in there, it states that it needs to be perpendicular from the right-of-way, which it is. So I don't understand the regulation. I had that discussion with staff, and it still was put on here for an exception. So in my opinion, we're asking for one exception. I know there was drainage comments brought up in the rezone. You have drainage calculations that address that. The drainage comes from the farm, not really from one more house going in here. He has agreed to remove the one entrance off of McIntyre so he can retain his entrance to his house. And as I said, we've had several boundary line adjustments, track splits, plats that have broken lines, whether they're going around a pond, which is accepted. They have gone around buildings, lagoons. They've been broken just to get the same number of lots. This property could have a second house on it as is without touching it, do the accessory dwelling unit, but they prefer to plat it, to follow the rezone, and get it platted into a separate lot. We've had 2 comp plan meetings where we could address the map and how we're going to address this in the future. And this area was not brought up to remove it from 2.5 acre or R3U, 3 units per acre. The map was said to leave it alone. And it is not in a platted subdivision, as much as many people have stated. It is just a tract of land. So here to ask for your approval of this. It was supported by staff with the exceptions and approved by your planning commission with a 5-2 vote. Thank you.
Question.
Yes.
There seems to be some dispute whether McIntyre was gravel at the time. You said it was.
Yes.
Some of the neighbors are saying that it wasn't.
When
it was built in 2004.
per testimony of the owner, it was gravel at the time when he put it in. Whether it was or isn't, and I even put in my email to you, I don't know if that was a deterrent or a reason why it was only 100 feet. I mean, the people who said it probably weren't surveyors, probably couldn't get it exact. So we've had bigger discrepancies than 5 feet. That's less than 5% of the regulation. And I mean, of the whole portion of the building sitting over is probably 30 square feet.
We're not going to, let's not have discussion during public
Oh.
comment, please.
Oh.
And
Thank you.
on my last
Well, I was
question,
just
if there
asking
are
a question.
questions, I would like to answer those during the time when you discuss this plat. Thank you.
Okay. Next is Karen Fernandez, please. State your name and address, please. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Karen Fernandez. I'm at 16930 McIntyre Road. My husband and I live there right next to the Grays. And we are here today to ask that our neighborhood stay as is and what it was designed to be. That is why we all moved here, to know exactly how the neighborhood would be established and stay as such. We are all on 5 acres or more. Changing this is a punch in our face to our community. We are not against the growth in the county. We know it's inevitable, but we are against the comprehensive plan being manipulated and misused in an already established neighborhood. Comprehensive plan was meant to grow the county, but not chop up what is already established and be used in a way that it was not designed to be used for. I thought the purpose of the 2.5 acre split was to preserve ag land. How does this preserve any ag land? We asked the commissioners to deny this plat subdivision on all accounts. This would be our established neighborhood. This would open our established neighborhood and surrounding established neighborhoods to go outside the comprehensive plan as designed. Thank you for your time, and I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Sedona Ramos. Again, please state your name and address. Thank you.
Sidonio Ramos, 24369 170th Street. Yes. Like Ms. Hernandez says, when all of us moved out there, we moved because of the size of the property. We'd be close to the city but have country living. If we want to live in the city, we would move to the city. Mr. Gray, everybody's known him since he developed out there. He built out there. It's none of our fault that there's all the violations. But the comprehensive plan, it's not written in stone. So it's for undeveloped areas like the 300 plus acres that are on top of the hill. But in developed neighborhoods, it's not meant to go in and tear it up and destroy it. Everything that is in there barely supports what's there now. The water main, what we were told and what's being told now are two completely different things. The water main in our street, we were told, was a 4-inch main. When they dug it up, it's a 2-inch main. So when we wanted fire hydrants, they said, well, if we put one there and there's a fire, nobody down your street's going to have any water. So, it's not meant for double everything. So, he's got issues with his property. They've been there since the property was built. And yes, like they said, the street was gravel. It was blacktop during the late 90s or early 2000s. And Mr. Blazer stored his equipment on Mr. Gray's property that he drove for that new house he wants to build. So this isn't something that's like gone on recently. It's been there forever. So we ask that the exceptions be denied and the plat, also be denied because it doesn't exist with the way the comprehensive plan was developed for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Tim Porterfield? State your name and address, please.
Timothy Porterfield, 17017 McIntyre Road, directly across the street from where this is all going to take place on the Gray's property. First, let me start. My wife couldn't be here, but I'm going to use we because we agree, and if you need a letter, I can get her to send you one. But we requested the Board of County Commissioners to deny the application for the Gray's Corner subdivision. Kind of question how many two-house subdivisions are in the county. It seems like a loophole to slide around the comprehensive plan. I have the notes from the November 10th Planning and Zoning meeting. They cite two exceptions that they're requesting or need before they would go along with approval. The first one being the Article 50 of straight or perpendicular lines in the county to split to keep all the tracks the same. Ask that you deny this, not only for this instance, but it's going to set a precedent all through the county that how are you going to tell the next person no that wants a crooked line? The planning and zoning is responsible. The surveyors has got to keep it all together. It's just going to hinder everyone. It's not allowed. These are rules. So anyhow, that's the reason I asked for that. The setback of the existing building not being correct. Ron's a builder. I'm sure he knows how to measure, but he did. It was more convenient to put the building where it is and catch me later. So the submitted plat drawing by Herring shows a 40-foot right-of-way on the map that was this last meeting. The first mile is 60-foot right-of-way. The road is set to a Kansas standard of sight lines, 4-to-1 slopes, 8-foot flat-bottom ditches. So even if it goes the wrong way, I don't think you're going to see that ditch where that driveway is now. The RR 2.5 was created, as the other people have said, to encourage development in the county, the rural area of, I don't know if this is the right word, virgin land, to get more development out in the suburbs and help build the county. I don't believe it was ever intended or the intent of the master plan and the commissioners or anyone to disrupt existing neighborhoods, possibly open another can of worms in our neighborhood. I've got 6 acres. Maybe I want to split. I've got the 400-foot of frontage. I don't want to split. And there's other homes that would fit these kind of guidelines if you allow the exceptions. So I want to thank you for supporting both your county zoning and planning commission, enforce the rules as is, and deny both the request for Gray's Corner subdivision and the exceptions that were outlined in the submittal from planning and zoning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that's all that we had for public comment today. We have administrative business. We need to amend address in resolution 2021-36, a special use permit for a boat and RV storage.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commissioners, this is David Van Paris. Your Honor, I just finished court. Madam Chairman, members of the commission, due to a clerical error, the wrong address was inserted in resolution 2021-36 as adopted by the board. You've been presented with an amended resolution 2021-36 that corrects both the address and the term of the initial term of the special use permit. I would suggest all other conditions remain the same and would ask for your consideration to approve the amended resolution.
Do you need a motion or just consensus?
Motion.
Okay, I move that we amend the address in resolution 2021-36 special use permit for boat and RV storage.
Commissioner, if I could ask, could your motion be amended to just adopt amended resolution 21 for 2021-36.
So moved.
Thank you.
Have a motion and a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stevens.
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you for your time, Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Van Paris. Okay, now we'll move to the consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be removed from the consent agenda?
Commissioner, before we go there, we all the rest of the commissioners all received the letter.
Yes.
I just want to disclose that we all received the letter and read it.
Is that on the flat land? Yep. I'm going to reach out to that person that wrote that and see if we can work all those things out.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to disclose that we were all notified outside of a meeting.
Got it. Yeah, I'll reach out to them.
Okay. All
I
right.
didn't
I didn't see the letter.
I just received the letter in my
Okay.
information today, so
Oh, okay. Well,
but
it was last
I'm
week,
sure we
so-
got it.
Yeah, you
but
got it.
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. Well, then don't open it then. No, it's okay because I disclosed that we
Yeah.
all received this letter outside of a meeting. That's all I wanted to do, is make
Okay.
clarification here. Thank you.
anything else? Have anything administratively? Jeff? Okay. Anything that needs to be pulled from the consent agenda?
I will say one thing.
Yes.
After we passed our proclamation last week, the legislature immediately responded, and they passed legislation dealing with the vaccine. I'm sure they did it in direct response to what we did.
Right, okay.
I appreciate
They should
what
have
they
plenty
did.
of time to work on the local ad valorem tax.
Well, maybe so.
Now they have that. They
That's
have
next.
extra time
Okay.
now. Okay. All right.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Voting beginning with Commissioner Stevens.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay. Now we move on to formal board action. We're going to consider a motion to approve case number DEV 21-161 and 162, a preliminary and final plat for Gray's Corner.
Good morning, Commissioners. Before you is a request to approve a preliminary and final plat for Gray's Corner, which is located at the the northeast corner of 171st Street and McIntyre Road. This is an existing 5-acre lot that the applicant is proposing to plat into a 2-lot subdivision, both of which would be 2.5 plus acres. There is a house in existence, and it shall remain with Lot 2 of the property. In addition, there is also a detached garage, which will remain with Lot 2, and then a small shed that will remain on Lot 1. As already previously heard, there are 2 exceptions that were included in staff's conditions. One was based off of a setback. The other was based off of a lot line. I just wanted to clarify there is a definition for a side lot line, and there are regulations. By the very nature of definitions, they tend to be broader. They have to account for a wider range of scenarios in which, we have to regulate within the county. The regulation specifically says that a property line shall project 90 degrees from the front property line or tangential if it's curved, unless an exception is granted. So the regulations do allow for the Planning Commission in this body to grant these exceptions, whether or not they are specifically stated, whether they're not included in just the findings, or whether they're just part of the submittal. So staff, as me, I typically err on the side of safety rather than sorry, so I did call it out. But if you have any further questions, I believe all of these items were addressed in the staff report. And I also wanted to clarify, there was a comment made about a 2-inch water line. We did receive notification from Rural Water District number 8 that there is a 6-inch water line that runs along the north side of McIntyre Road that would service this property. So I believe that sufficient water supply would be able to support a second house.
Just can't provide fire flow.
Correct.
Commissioner Stevens, you have something?
Yeah, I have a question. Mr. Herring was saying if we turn this plat down, then the landowner has other options. What would those potentially be?
The lot line would need to be addressed if that's the rationale by which you're not going to approve this. The only thing I can think of is that the building would need to come down to be able to meet the standard without the exception.
Is that what you were addressing specifically? Yeah.
Or were you saying they could just build an accessory dwelling without having to do a plat?
They can do that as it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
They could go ahead and build anyways and just call it accessory dwelling and couldn't be sold separately.
Right. It would all have to remain as one property.
But that's not what the plan, I mean, that's not what the landowner's plan is. They want-
No, not that it has been indicated to staff.
Okay. And the applicant, they are in compliance with all the county rules and regulations at this time, except for the 2 exceptions.
Correct.
There was building permits issued on all these buildings.
That is correct. They have either come in and gotten the building permits.
But they weren't at the time that they were built.
Right. If I believe there is one that came in after it was built, but he did comply with our request for that he get a building permit for it.
Okay.
Was there a building that was taken down?
There was a building that was removed, but he had intentions of removing it, I believe, once staff notified him that he needed to get a building permit. I believe the property owner sold that building.
No, I saw a picture of that. It looked like a tiny home. Maybe they're moving it down to the south part of the county.
Okay.
But
And I guess my question, why doesn't, I guess we don't have a policy where the county, when you get a building permit, they come out and check the setbacks when you put your building up?
We
It's just
are
they
not
draw it
surveyors,
out.
so it's really hard for us to determine whether or not that dimension is being met. When they submit a building permit, they are submitting a site plan saying that they are going to build it to the specifications of that site plan. So they are certifying that they will meet all the standards with that building permit.
Okay, and nobody at the county level goes out and checks and say, hey. So,
But I think it's safe to say that when somebody is looking at, and when they're doing their building on a 5-acre lot, because that is what the people who have established their home and their buildings and things on 5 acres, that they're not considering how things are laid out, anticipating that they're going to do a subdivision to 2.5. Everybody in the neighborhood, all the people who are living there are anticipating that they're going to be on 5 acres, and they're not anticipating that they're going to figure out how things are going to be moved around to live on 2.5 instead of 5 acres.
okay, so how was all these 5 acres done without a plat?
I believe they were through track splits that were allowed at the time.
Right.
Prior to the subdivision
Prior to
regulations.
96.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if been after 96, it would have been plat already.
Split out already.
Yeah.
Okay. So this started out as what's out there? 40 acres, 20 acres?
I believe it was a 20-acre parcel originally.
20-acre parcel, so it's already had 4 splits. And was all the entrance permits, the extra driveway was permitted and everything?
They received all the required permits when they built whatever they built out there.
Okay. I want to go over everything that was brought up in some of our emails. I'm sorry, I'm not real organized. Okay, we don't. The deal about the barn being behind the house instead of in front of the house or out by the road. What?
So, it is projecting closer to McIntyre Road than it is than the house is.
Mm-hmm.
Our regulations just say all buildings have to meet the setbacks. In addition to that, the house faces off of 171st Street.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we would consider as their front, and that the McIntyre Road, while it is a frontage, is more of a secondary frontage.
Okay. But you can have your garage or your barn closer to the road than your house is.
As our requirements read, yes, you can do that, as long as you meet the setbacks.
Right. Okay, that's why I was confused on that, because I couldn't find that reg that was brought up. And then, now does the barn have a septic system?
I believe it does not.
Okay.
We did ask about that when the question was raised. What we determined was that there might be a water line going into the barn, but no septic system attached to it.
Okay. And we know that for sure.
The best that we could come up with.
We allowed to ask any question.
They've already had
Does the
public-
county have a sanitation inspector? I'll just ask him. Send him out.
We do. Well, it's been the issue's been raised that the barn has facilities in it, I guess.
And our
Either-
sanitation inspector did contact the property owner,
Oh,
and I
okay.
believe the applicant agent, and that was what was explained to him. And to the best of his ability, he was not able to find.
Okay.
Are you the landowner?
Yes, I can answer these questions even about
Why don't you come up?
the location of the barn.
Would you like to have him
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Have him come up to the podium.
come up to the podium, please?
My name's Ron Gray. I live at 24450 171st Street. In answer to your question about the barn's location, when we built the barn, McIntyre Road was gravel, and that's a section line road. After we had built the barn, the county decided to pave that part of it because they had an agreement with the people that developed the property where Tim lives, that subdivision across the street. Freddie Blazer property. Anyways, when we built it, the barn was 110 feet from the center line. They re-centered that road, and at that time, they took that property off of me, which made my barn closer to the road as it is now. In answer to your question about there being a septic system, when we built the barn, I had the parts left over from other jobs that we were doing. I built kind of a kitchen upstairs in the loft area of the barn. I built a bathroom up there, none of which are finished. I've never put in a lateral field, although they think I have. I put in a water line that comes up to the barn and feeds into the barn. Other than that, none of the plumbing works in there. It's not even hooked up to nothing. You're welcome to come out and take a look.
Now, there seems to be some dispute as to whether the road was paved or not.
It wasn't. When we built the barn, it was gravel. Because
Okay.
after the fact, where my barn, there were two entrances. When we bought all that property on the corner there was an entrance where the barn is, and there was an entrance farther on the other side of the creek that runs through the property. And then when we built the house on that kind of a diagonal in the property, our driveway for the house is on 171st Street. We got a permit from the county for that. They gave us the little flags to put in where they put the culvert. So that's how the two of those entrances were there.
You recall what year that was?
Well, I built the house, we moved in 97.
So would that have been the year you did that?
Yeah. Well, no, we built the barn a couple of years later, but
Like
I don't
98?
remember the exact year.
Ron, it was 2004 you built the barn. I came in 2003, and the road was already paved.
No, it's not true.
That is
And when
true.
you guys bought the ground, it was not paved.
We're not going to have,
Or-
sorry, we're not going to have conversations, please.
So, but I
We're
can,
not going to have conversation, please.
Yeah.
So, when they re-centered that road, my driveway from the barn used to drive down onto McIntyre. After they got done regrading it, Freddie Blazer, after they got regrading it and moving it over, they had raised that thing up so high I couldn't even get my RV into the barn no more. Couldn't even get it out of my driveway.
Okay, well, I think that you answered the question that Commissioner Stephen had. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just say something which is relevant to the center of the road?
Madam Chairman, as much as I know this board likes to indulge the citizens, and you should, the public hearing on this matter was conducted before the Planning Commission.
Right,
It
that's
was
sorry.
provided with public notice, and I think you'd have to go through the steps of reopening a public hearing, which would mean additional published and mailed notice.
Right, that's why I can't have a lot of public comment. I apologize, but the public comment portion was was allowed, and now we can't have a lot of conversation and exchange of. Thank you.
So if that was the case, that the county put the center line, change the center line, if that was the case, I'm not saying, would that exception still be required, or and what was it in the lot line? I mean, we
I
should
believe
know
what it refers
what
to
year
is
that was done.
Yeah, I believe what it refers to is the center of the right of way. So what a lot of people do is measure off the center of the road, which isn't necessarily the center of the right of way. It's just the easiest way to measure without hiring somebody to measure it for you. That being said, this body has granted exceptions for buildings being in the right of or in that setback in the past. So this is falling in line with previous approvals that have come. Be that as it may, I would say that the exceptions still would need to be as part of the conditions.
Okay. And then the one driveway has to be removed. Is that correct?
Right, and they have accounted for that on the plat.
Okay.
Well, I think that, I made clear during the initial thing with the thing that this was one of the reasons this issue of the division to begin with, the 2.5 to begin with, was what I had the concern with from the get-go of why we are trying to make some changes with the plan to be, from the get-go. I think that if we're going to do replats and somebody wants to start over, that although there's a house that exists, I think that it's fair to say the house should not, but I think that if there's other buildings and things that they should technically have to be removed. If we're going to start over, then it should start over. If there's existing other buildings that are on the property or whatever, then start over. Otherwise, keep it 5 acres and live on your 5 acres. But if you're going to take advantage of the fact that we have changed the zoning to 2.5 and you want to replat, then start over. That's just my opinion. If you want to have your house and your living, your living quarters where your home is on your 2.5 acres, and you've replat, you've done your replat on your 2.5 acres, fine. If you have your barn or whatever is on your 2.5 acres there, fine. But if there are any other structures on the existing 2.5, they need to go. That's my feeling.
And this structure we're talking about is a 40 by 60. Is that what we're talking about? The 40 by 60, and it's going to be on lot 1, and that's why you got to get a different. You don't have a straight line.
Right.
It'll be on lot 2. It'll remain with the house.
But that's fine. But I'm just saying. But if there's anything else, then that.
I have a question for. When we've deviated from the line, I'm trying to recall. Have we ever required anyone to actually move a structure?
I'm not aware of anything. I'm still relatively new to the county, so but I have not heard in past instances. And as Mr. Herring provided with you in that email, he did provide examples of where a line had been curved to accommodate a building. So I would say it's highly unlikely that through the platting process a building has had to come down.
I just think that if we keep doing this, if we keep making exceptions, if we keep trying to make exceptions, then we're going to be making exceptions forever. And we're not consistent, and we've got to be consistent. We have got to begin to be consistent with the decisions that we make, and we have not been. But that's my opinion.
Okay, back to the barn, that it's all plumbed up inside for living quarters, kitchen, facility. If this goes to 2.5 acres, what can be done about a septic then?
They would need to get a permit for any septic system that would be installed for that barn. If their intention is to use it as an accessory dwelling unit, they would need to comply with all the regulations outlined for that. So it wouldn't be a situation where they could automatically just install a septic and operate an ADU. They would have to come in and apply for the appropriate permits.
So we'd have 2 septics on 2.5 acres, or
If they can.
Or on the accessory, or can you hook into the existing laterals?
That is a question I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look into it.
Okay.
So, I have a question for Dave, for Mr. Van Paris.
Sure, could you speak up?
Mr. Van Paris, my question for you is, if we have approved these types of things before, and in this instance we would determine that we are going to deviate from that and not approve it, and perchance make him remove his actual building at a cost to the landowner, and we have a part of our land use plan that says that this type of a rezone would be allowed and permitted in that area, and we actually went through the rezoning process, is this a potential for the landowner to go across the street and declare that our decision is arbitrary and capricious?
Okay, Commissioner, that's a 4-part question.
Well, you're an attorney, so you can
So
do
I'll
this.
answer yes, no, and you can mix it up. Commissioner, each case is handled separately, so I don't think you should be concerned, nor should people take any of your specific actions to be setting a precedent for future actions. That would curtail your judgment to deal with particular situations and should not, quite frankly, should not be a consideration on your part. As far as your last question, any citizen is entitled by law to appeal any decision of this Board of County Commissioners to the District Court of the State of Kansas. As far as setting any precedent, no. You don't need to, and you shouldn't be concerned about that. Each case should be handled specifically. I will offer this observation from my experience. Although people find it hard, and I initially found it very hard to fathom, roads move. Road surfaces gradually over time. The right-of-way, however, does not. And I think, as your director pointed out, people generally tend to measure from the center of the roadway, which is not generally where the middle of the right-of-way is. So setback issues, I think, can be problematic if you wish to go within a degree of several feet. If that were the case, I would posit that there may be thousands of dwellings or other structures in the county that might be within the setbacks, because over time, either the right-of-way or the roads have changed, or people didn't measure correctly. The county has never undertaken to cause the demolition of a structure due to any minor, what I would term minor setback infringement. That is a matter of feet, not by dozens of feet or 100 feet, but by several feet. With those observations, however, you are entitled to and in fact charged with exercising your judgment on this type of issue, and I would suggest to you prior instances may be instructive, but they are not binding.
I did want to make a question. I looked it up. It does say from the center line of the road. So at this time, I would still say that you would want to keep the exception just because it doesn't meet the center line of the road right now when the action of the subdivision plat is taking place, unless the county councilor feels differently. But from a record-keeping perspective, I think you would just want to make it as part of the record.
Certainly any decision should be made part of the record, but again, commissioners, roads move, either through the county regrading the road, or as time goes by, maintenance of the road, those roads move sometimes by a matter of feet. If a road's realigned, it could move by more than several feet.
I just feel that there's consequences for making a decision to take advantage of the comprehensive plan and the change that the commission made in allowing for changing from 5 acre to 2.5, that when we had a neighborhood that was planned and people who purchased and developed their homes. Even the applicant developed that property in mind that it was on 5 acres with all of the things and the accessory buildings and everything that was done in mind that it was 5 acres that he was working with, as opposed to 2.5 acres. That now he comes before us asking to have all of these exceptions for us to work with him to make exceptions so that he can take advantage of the 2.5. And I personally feel that it's not. I don't think that's what we had intended when we were trying to develop this comprehensive plan, and when we were trying to move toward development in the county. And so that's just. Mr. Stevens?
That's the comprehensive plan, and when I can't, my eyes aren't the best. And I had Josh, and the roads aren't marked very well in here, and I had Josh mark where this X is, but where this property is right next to, on our comprehensive plan, we say residential 3 units per acre. It's right to the east, and then where this is residential 2.5, and we've rezoned it to that. However, in the zoning, other than the small rezone, it is 5 acre. But it looks like as far as the comprehensive plan, it looks like it's 2.5 or even more dense as far as what the comprehensive plan is calling for. I understand what you're saying, but my problem I'm struggling because with Kane Estates down in my area, we did the same thing. People have moved places thinking that they're going to be on 5 acres, but the county's growing, and we've been making these changes. So I don't know how we do it here and don't do it here. That's the one thing I'm struggling with. Now, if it was a subdivision, like I know when we've been talking about changing the rules, if this was a defined subdivision, we're talking about not allowing lot splits, which would help, and we're talking about frontage changes, which would help. But on this particular one, it's hard to. I'm struggling with this one to figure out.
Because across the street, it's a platted subdivision.
Yeah.
And that's how the road got paid.
Right.
Developing that subdivision, and the developer paid to upgrade the road. So.
But when we talk to folks down in other areas where we've done this, how do we tell them? We say no here, but we said yes here.
I just think that when we're talking about, I think that there's difference between having larger portions of area. Like I said, it was this specific property that got me to begin with questioning how are we going to address these property owners that are facing having their
I get it. It's not,
neighborhood chopped up.
We just have to figure out a consistent
Well,
way.
if it was platted already, it wouldn't be happening.
Right.
Because we've already said we're not going to do that anymore.
Right.
And it won't happen across the street because it's a platted subdivision.
Right. Well,
Well, my take on this is the reason that we came up with the 2.5 acres in the new comprehensive plan was to preserve agricultural land. It didn't make any sense to me when somebody has 300 acres of farm ground and they just wanted to sell the old original farmhouse off to somebody that's not going to do any farming. Why did they have to buy 5 acres when I can show you hundreds and hundreds of 5 acre tracts where people had to buy 5 acres and they waste the back 3 or 4 acres. So the 2.5 acre minimum made a lot of sense to me to move from the 5 to the 2.5 to preserve ag. Since we came up with a new comprehensive plan, we've had a couple work sessions, and a lot of people have reached out to me about things like this. A lot of people have reached out to me about these 5 acre splits. It didn't have anything to do with this particular one, but I think it probably brought it up. So I'm getting a lot of feedback from people that are in 5 acre areas, that not necessarily 5 acre plats, but areas that have been divided up in a bunch of 5 acre tracts, stating that they don't really like the idea of it being further divided. To me, if it's a 5 acre tract, it's probably not ag anyway, so splitting it again in 2.5 does nothing to preserve ag. So in the work session, I think I already suggested it, but I was going to suggest it in the next one too, that maybe we come up with a rule that 2.5 acre minimum splits, but 5 acres can't be split again. I don't know if 5 acres is the cutoff or what, but I'm getting plenty of feedback from people that don't want 5 acre areas split further. So that's just what people want. It doesn't preserve ag, so that's my reasoning. So it doesn't really have a lot to do with the exceptions and the setbacks and all the other reasons.
Mm-hmm. And it'd be a corner lot. It'd have to be a corner lot to be split, pretty much.
Yeah, anyway,
And,
for the road frontage.
and this is a corner, 5 acres.
Any other discussion?
I think I got, okay, we answered. I think I've got everything I had. And the drainage, a lot of people talk about drainage, but that's been during the platting process. All the drainage calculations are figured.
Yes, the Public Works Department did review the drainage report that was submitted with the application, and it supports an additional lot on the property.
So, as it stands right now, the barn is not considered an accessory dwelling at this time, correct?
It is just an accessory building.
It's an accessory building. It could be converted into an accessory dwelling.
Potentially.
Okay.
I will say one thing, Commissioner Culberson. We put this comprehensive plan that we're reviewing it every year, and we've had it in effect about a year, and now we're hearing how people feel about it, and our job is to be responsive to that. And just because it's a land use plan doesn't mean that it's an automatic. You get a rubber stamp, and we automatically do it. And it's not the Bible. It's a land use plan, and folks have the right to weigh in on it, and they have. And I think that we need to tread cautiously when the way we're encouraging the development.
Okay, so if this was a 20-acre tract and they applied for a subdivision, you think we should follow the comp plan and do 2.5, correct?
No, what I'm trying to do is get consistent on all of these.
No,
that's
what,
I'm trying.
If we were
Right.
talking about a
Yeah.
larger,
Right.
I think that then it would be a different conversation,
Right.
even for me.
Okay.
But I think that when we're talking about
Existing.
an existing
5 acres.
5 acres where we have a community of people who have expressed, very vocally opposition to this, and have had very valid reasons, I think, you know, and are not opposed to development.
But you can argue both sides.
Yes, you can argue both sides. I agree, but I just think that it's just that
And there could be another house built on this property as an accessory dwelling, but it just can't be split and sold separately. Am I correct on that?
You're correct.
Okay.
And then typically, let's say there's access. Let's say that happened. Let's just talk about how typically that's been handled. Let's say there's an accessory building, then later on somebody wants to split it. Has that? How do we typically handle that?
I don't think we've had the accessory dwelling unit standards long enough to be able to test that. But I imagine it'll be, if they wanted to split it, it would have to meet the same criteria as any other split. The building has to meet the required setbacks, lot coverage. The lots would have to comply with the regulations.
So, well, I don't know if this is how the rest of the commissioners feel about this, but my personal view on this would be that I personally would like to have a little more time to think about it, and maybe we wait till Commissioner Smith gets back and have a full complement of commissioners.
So you're asking to table it?
Could we do that till Commissioner Smith gets back?
Doesn't matter to me either way. I would rather not, but
I don't care either way. I'm like you.
depending on how the vote comes out, we might have to anyway.
Well, it'd be nice to have everybody weigh in, because this is seems to be, for some reason, this one seems to be really difficult.
This is Commissioner Cause's area.
well, we're here to make a decision. I mean, that's what we have been elected to do, is to vote. And if we don't have a clear vote, then
I just myself would like to give it a little more thought.
okay. I mean,
You want to table it till after we after the comp plan's done? Is that what you want to do?
Well, I was just going to say to Commissioner
We
Smith
need to
got
have a
back
date
that
certain.
Well, that's what I said. We got to have a date certain.
we need to have a date certain if you're going to table it. I mean, we can wait until the comprehensive plan review has been completed, if that's what you'd like to do. I think that would probably be the more, otherwise I think we need to vote. That's,
Okay, then do we have a date certain on that?
No.
Well, maybe we table it to the second week of January.
Commissioners, I hate to interject, but this is not a rezoning. So the one-year prohibition against future consideration would not apply. And you've heard me say this before. My philosophy is sometimes better a terrible end than terror without end. And continuing matters, if you don't have a clear idea of how that might resolve the issue, doesn't resolve the issue. So I'd just like to offer that. In other words, this is not a rezoning, so the Golan factors are not applicable, nor does the one-year prohibition against reapplication or reconsideration apply.
But if you wanted to table
Have
it, full board.
Yeah, we're short a commissioner.
Commissioner, I would suggest if that's the case, you might want to table the matter for 2 weeks. I believe Commissioner Smith was intending to return by that time.
because I will not be here the first week in January.
3 weeks.
Of January.
Of January. You said the first
December.
week.
If we just do
Okay,
3
that's
weeks.
still
Talking
December.
about the table until
Well, that's-
Commissioner Smith gets back.
Right,
Commissioner
so-
Mike Smith.
What would the date be on that? The third week?
I believe it'd be the 8th would be 3 weeks, Commissioners.
Okay, I'll just move that we
Or 2
table
weeks.
7th or 8th, whatever.
Table this to the 8th? Is that the
That'd be
7th
2
or
weeks
Your
8th?
from
phone
today.
out to see what the date is.
8th, yep.
Hang on.
That would be the 8th.
Okay, table till December the 8th. We need a
Does
motion
need
for
to be a
that?
form of a motion?
I would suggest to be the form of a motion, Commissioners.
So
I'll
moved.
entertain a motion. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion is second, voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
What do we do, flip a coin?
If a tie vote means the motion does not pass.
Okay. Back on the question.
Back on the question. Motion to approve case, I'll entertain a motion to approve case number DEV 21-161 and 162, a preliminary and final plat for Gray's Corner. Anyone make a motion? No motion. It dies for a lack of motion. Does that mean it does not pass?
If the chair posited that it was requesting a motion to approve the proposal and there is no motion made, you could argue that. I would suggest to resolve the matter, there should be a motion to either approve or deny.
Motion to approve or deny?
I'll make a motion to approve case DV 21-161 and 162.
A motion to a second? I'll second.
Okay.
I have a motion to second. Voting beginning with Commissioner Stephen.
Well, do we have discussion?
Discussion.
I'm not certain that I am opposed to this, but I'm still working through. The issue I have really is this, because this is what we're going by, or trying to, and we kind of, we're like a car that has sputtering along when we're dealing with this, but it's right adjacent to what would be even higher density, than we're even talking about. And so I personally am not sure that I'm actually in no vote, but because I haven't had time to really study it enough, I'm going to vote no.
And because I think that further work sessions are going to prove out that we're going to come up with a rule saying no 5-acre divisions down to 2.5 acres, I vote no.
I vote no.
No.
Motion is denied 4-0. Thank you, Amy. Okay, moving on to consider a motion to approve the scope of work and agreement with Converge 1 for phone upgrades in an amount not to exceed $86,524. Mr. Marlboro, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This would be an upgrade to the phone system, which we discussed in the work session a month or so ago.
A little longer, probably.
May have been longer.
But I do remember it.
This will upgrade your entire phone system, and it will also bring it into compliance with Kerry's Law and Raybaum. I believe that's the correct phrase of those. Raybaum's Act and Kerry's Law, which is the 911 location capabilities that is now required of anyone with a new phone system. So as we upgrade it, we have to comply with those particular laws now, so it's made it a little more expensive than it would have been a year or so ago. The county councilor looks like he has something interesting to add.
I do not.
Please, David.
That's just the way he looks.
He looked really ready to engage on the Raybaum.
Mr. Marlboro did ask me to review this. I know your county administrators reviewed it. The proposal, I think, meets the federal requirements that are necessary to upgrade your phone system. And the suggestion would be to approve the upgrade as presented.
Yeah, we've went through this on a during the work session.
Yep, we
Yeah.
did.
We were all, he had his maps of lines and
Yeah, we
fiber
did.
lines and all
Yeah.
that.
Saw the
Yeah,
whole thing.
that was the
So-
work session.
Yeah, so,
That's what it's about.
Any questions, additional questions?
no. And this is on, okay, there's two separate deals we're going to be dealing with.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, I move that we approve the project and authorize the chairman to sign the scope of work in quote documents not to exceed $86,524.
And a motion, and a second? Motion and a second. Voting beginning with Commissioner Steben.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Thank you, sir.
And the second item, yeah, thank you for that. The second item is the fiber optic network project management. We bring before you an addendum to an existing contract that the county apparently has with Olson for services with Public Works and Planning and Zoning. This addendum would hire them to handle the management aspects of the fiber optic connectivity that we discussed in the same work session, Justice Center, Courthouse, Cushing, and the Health Department. The amount quoted from Olson was $169,600, so $169,600 for the services.
There are on-call engineering,
Yeah.
yes.
This was
And this-
reviewed by Mr. Knoll, representing the
Back.
GIS department,
He's in the back there if anybody has any additional questions.
and he found the amount to be acceptable.
Sitting in the corner.
Okay.
He's back in the corner.
Yeah.
Coming forward, I'm sure.
Any questions?
It's just an addition to our contract. This is,
Commissioner, this project will entail substantial review work to avoid utility disruptions and conflicts. Again, your county administrator has reviewed this with your staff. I've looked at it. While I can't offer you any professional opinion as to the scope, I can offer the observation that this will involve several miles of fiber optic cable being installed in existing right-of-ways, which are occupied by numerous utilities. So it's a substantial project.
no, I understand. And I would hope they would not do like they do in the county and just go out there and cut through water lines and
Start
lay
digging.
cable down. So, no, I understand. It is a lot of money, but this project in the city, if you do any utility work in the city, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, we've
I
gotta
was a
get-
little bit surprised at the amount myself, but they are following the project to its conclusion. It's not just the design or the implementation of getting started. They're going to be working through the entire process to the end with the utility locates, even working with us to notify DigSafe or whoever else needs to be notified of where these things have been placed so that hopefully somebody in the future won't cut through our cable
Right.
doing a willy-nilly project in the city of Leavenworth. Yeah.
Oh, it will happen.
I'm sure it will.
Of course it will.
We'll have to close courthouse down.
But we're hoping to maybe reduce it.
Minimize.
Yeah, minimize the amount of times that it happens to us.
Well, I'll entertain a motion. Anybody have any other discussion?
No, I mean, it's just the price of doing business.
Yeah, I guess it is. Anybody want to make the motion?
I'll do it, Madam Chair. I move that we authorize the chairman to sign the attached professional services with Olson not to exceed the amount of $169,600.
Second.
A motion and a second. Voting beginning with Commissioner Steben.
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
That's all I
Okay.
had for you today.
Thank you. You just cost us some money there today.
Yes, I
Thank you
did.
very much, sir.
Enjoy your
Enjoy
Thanksgiving.
your Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too. I had a question for Mr. Knoll if we got time.
Come on up. And he can update us on Eisenhower Road while he's at it, too.
Oh, it's looking
We're
good out
almost
there.
done. We had the walkthrough yesterday.
Yep, Eisenhower Road's getting really close to being open. We're not sure whether it'll occur today, prior to the holiday. We'll probably be notified later today. We do have a final punch list prepared, and I did have that meeting yesterday. A couple of the inspector representatives from the city of Leavenworth did attend. And so we have a couple items where there's a crack in the curb that need to be removed, so we may not open it to full traffic. There's a little bit of grading and some seating to be completed east of 20th Street primarily. And so it will be wrapping up quickly. Next week there will be some Evergy poles put in place, and we will have the ribbon cutting ceremony for the project with both the City of Lansing and the City of Leavenworth on Wednesday, December 1st at 1:30. So looking forward to the completion of the project. It does look good. Contractors work with us well, and so soon it will be a city street.
This completes all the promises made on the ballot for the sales tax projects. We got to start working on the 2006 to 16 promises that were made that were not kept. So.
And the four-way flashers are flashing as of last night.
Yes, as of last night, the stoplights were flashing red, so we'll have four-way flashing red at the 20th Street intersection of Eisenhower for 3 days, and then we will turn the signs to fully operational for the traffic signals. So.
Well, I had a question for Mr. Knoll about how to change a minimum maintenance road to a county regular maintenance road.
So that would be done through the same process as any road that would be accepted into the county. You would just bring that road up to county standards. On a case-by-case basis, we could look at it and address it with the board to see if it was something the board was engaged in and willing to accept. We do have some, specifically Donahue Road, that is adjacent to and has the city limit lines, I believe, running down the center line of that roadway, and so that could be impact that decision. But we do have several of these in the county that property owners have inquired about having the county take over full maintenance responsibilities of those roadways. Currently, we do have asphalt millings on them that we had spread at some point in the past, and we do some maintenance with grading twice a year at the request of any property owners.
So would these roads qualify for a dust abatement if the landowners got together and put in their $20 a foot or whatever it is now?
Well, a dust abatement policy does not specify that it would or would not, so I would probably bring that to the Board of County Commissioners for your consideration to see. We don't really have a base to put the roadway on, so there would be a subsidized cost for the property owners to do that, and so I think that would fall into the allocation of funds that would need to be approved by the Board of County Commissioners. So if that were to be applied for, I would bring that before the board for your consideration and your decision.
Okay. So it would have to be, it'd have to be refigured. It wouldn't be at that rate.
It would be refigured or subsidized by taxpayer funds, because the current cost would not account for the preparation of the road base, since they don't have a lot of gravel on them, or some of them don't hardly have any gravel. And so the cost of bringing that to a chip and seal roadway would be higher than your average cost, which is set at the $21.45, I believe, a foot this year. And so because there's allocation of funds that would be in excess of $5,000, I would bring that before the board for your consideration.
And usually in the fall, they try to fix anything on these minimum maintenance roads, get ready for winter anyways, correct?
Yeah, so the ones that don't have homes, we do have a couple that the owners have acknowledged by an affidavit and accepted the fact that they are building on a
minimum maintenance road.
County roadway. Primarily the twice a year grading, in my opinion, was set up for people to get into these agricultural areas and access them for planting in the spring and harvest in the fall. So you could call as a property owner request if you had a road that has substantially washed out or was rutted from people maybe using ATVs or something on it over the winter or in the spring. You could request that the county come out and do grading work in order to access your agricultural area for planting and harvest.
Okay. And if we did come up with a price to do the dust abatement with additional base, it'd still be eligible for that 5-year interest-free loan, right?
Yes, I don't see any reason that would change.
All right, that's all I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stephen?
Infrastructure bill that was passed through Congress, have you researched into how we're going to be able to access those funds or apply for them or grants or where are we at in the process of getting our appropriate share of funds?
Well, I don't know that it's going to be like the ARP funds where they necessarily set it based on population, and so they're not setting it based upon a appropriate level of funding due to your demographic here in your local communities. And so we'll have to apply for those funds either directly to the federal government or to the state. It is my understanding that like the off-system bridge program, for instance, that is through KDOT local projects, is going to have an influx of funds, maybe even 10 times as many funds as they would have in a normal cycle. I assume that they will phase that out over several years because of their staffing level, where they may have an influx of $30 million that they can appropriate towards that, or maybe even $50 or $75 million that they can appropriate towards bridges. They won't do that in a one-year cycle because I believe they will have until 2024 or 2025 to expend those funds. And so they'll probably allocate those out over the course of that period of time incrementally. And so we will have to apply for funding. And I know some of the projects, from previous to approval, different meetings that NACO had offered and different organizations, even ARP when we were working with them, some of that money, I believe, has been earmarked specifically for projects in coastal areas, either California or New York. So there's some money that's already in the bill itself has been allocated specifically towards different projects. And then other monies are going to be allocated for different programs that you would have to apply for.
Of course they do.
So we just want to make sure and part of this has these organizations that help you obtain those funds as well.
I believe we have someone on staff for that.
Right.
On board for that.
Is it called McIntyre?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there'll be, and so what those criteria are going to be important. I know we recently engaged a firm to work with some of these. Some of those processes involve a cost-benefit analysis, which is something that the county staff would have to facilitate through a contractor. So I know that is always a issue. Is even if you have a shovel-ready project from a design perspective, some federal programs require a cost-benefit analysis to be part of the application. So we'll be waiting to see what type of application process these grants have and whether the money is primarily coming through the state or the federal government.
Right.
So we don't know how it's going to get to us yet.
It's not over.
That hasn't been decided.
Nobody's going to show up with a big cardboard check or anything.
No.
It's not going to be the
Publisher's
No,
Clearinghouse.
not going to happen that way.
Well, you almost think it's going to have to come down through the state. So
Probably.
that's my.
Or through Mark. Thanks, Bill.
Well, there's some real possibilities of getting some
Absolutely.
real road
It
improvements.
is.
Well, thank you,
Well,
Bill.
whatever is out there, we will apply.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for all you do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Did you, a couple weeks ago in the Tonganoxie paper, did you see that in 1970, I believe, or 71, somebody wrote an article about the deficit? It was like $364 billion then.
Oh, boy.
At the end of the world.
With a B.
With a B. 364
We've moved up to T now.
Just this was just an additional bill. It's not. They thought it was horrible for $364 billion.
I remember my dad talking about it when that was in the 70s, talking about how
All right,
awful it
well,
was.
Let's move on to the end. Do you have anything else to add? Anything that you want to share for the?
Starting with, okay, I went to the Baser Mayor's Christmas tree lighting on Friday night. Huge turnout.
Good.
Always is in Baser. And I only made part of the Mark meeting yesterday. That's all I got.
I don't know if I may have said this last week, but I went to that last week ago Thursday to the Tonganoxie Business Expo, and it was really good. They did a really good job. And
Starting to fill up the
Getting a lot of calls about people's tax bills. People got their taxes. So it seems like a pattern. I get a lot of calls when that hits.
But you're good at explaining school bond, school bond, and school district.
Yep. I can get comparable home sales for folks if they need them.
That's
So
There we go.
if they're going to appeal.
well. Hopefully, next session we can get some property tax relief money back, and I know this board will pledge to use it all for property tax relief.
That's right. Commissioner Coleson, you didn't have anything? Okay,
Nope.
well, I had the workforce partnership meeting yesterday, and then I accompanied Bill with a walkthrough, and then yesterday I attended the city commission meeting and invited the commissioners to the ribbon cutting on the 1st, and they did a farewell to the 2 exiting city commissioners, acknowledged their leaving, and then yesterday was going to be their last formal meeting, and I believe that's it, and I think we have a request for public comment. Mr. Herring?
Now, is
Before we
Harbor
adjourn?
Freight's not going to make it open by Friday, is it? It doesn't look like it.
It doesn't appear that way.
Is it? Doesn't look like it.
They're still hiring. That's what I've heard. They're still doing interviews.
I was really hoping we could get it by Friday, and so we could watch the uptick in sales tax.
Oh.
Where's the ribbon cutting going to be at?
Eisenhower.
Yeah, but where at? I mean,
Oh,
Where the roundabout was supposed to be.
oh, it'll be on
at the stoplight.
Yeah, it'll be on the corner at the intersection, but not inside. We're going to have it in the grass area, like on the
We're going to stand in the
corner.
middle of the road.
We're not going to stand in the middle of the road, no.
At-
And we will block off the lane, the right turn lane, on
20th.
At
20th,
at
on
20th Street.
Eisenhower Road,
And 20th Street.
The park.
to park.
Okay.
We'll
Okay.
have that blocked off with cones for the people that are attending, and then standing in the grass area
But it's at the intersection.
at
of
the
20th.
intersection of 20th and Eisenhower
And 1:30
at
p.m.
1:30.
Okay.
Yep.
So you can buy lunch after the meeting.
Yeah, I'll have to eat. Can't go there
That's
without
right.
eating.
Mr. Herring,
Joe Herring. Yeah, we'll go Herring surveying.
Herring
this time.
surveying?
Yeah, we'll stay up there
Okay.
with that. Changes from what I was going to present earlier. But seems to be common that we're going against staff and planning commission up here more often, rather than not. I do appreciate the consent agenda, getting that through. Maybe you guys will catch on to that later or not, I don't know. My request, which if this can be my official request, and that is of course up to council, I would like in writing why that plat was denied. That's what my client's request from each of you, or is a consensus on the denial of that plat?
Mine's already in the minutes.
In writing, please. Thank you.
are we required to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
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 Aye.